Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Thought I'd do a little bonus video. I mean, it might not be a bonus to some people. They might be like, oh, not him again. But you know what? I was on a day off. It's a really wet and horrible day out there. Really disgusting day. You'll probably hear cars sloshing by in the background, maybe. Probably not the ice cream van, because that would be very weird. I don't think it would be their best sales day ever. And I just thought, you know what? There's been so much, even in just like the past 24 hours. I mean, we've had the fans forum, which there's loads to talk about from, loads of little bits and pieces from various people that spoke. I was also at the under-21s game last night. Saw the first bit of kind of game time for Alejo Veliz. I'm told that's how you pronounce it, Alejo, and they call him Ale around the club. He is a big old unit. He was 20. It was his birthday yesterday. Spending it in the surroundings of Colchester, which weirdly, I was thinking back, I may well have spent my 20th birthday in Colchester. It's a long story, but I'm pretty sure I probably would have done. Anyway, enough about me when I was 20, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. We need to start, unfortunately, with some really rubbish news. Ivan Perišić. This one kind of came out of the blue completely. Sounds like a bit of a freak training ground incident. Non-contact training, apparently. He's done his ACL. Absolutely rubbish. I've got the official statement here from the club. Ivan has suffered a complex anterior cruciate ligament injury in his right knee. The experienced Croatia international sustained the injury in non-contact training and will undergo surgery. Ivan will then commence his rehabilitation with our medical staff and is expected to be sidelined for the remainder of the season. So rubbish. Really weirdly and completely in a different sport, but first couple of weeks of NFL that I've been watching, there's been so many season-ending injuries. And here Spurs have got one just a couple of weeks into the Premier League season. Well, maybe 3-4 weeks into the Premier League season. Although, I should stress that the noises coming out from his camp is there's a hope that maybe it'll be more like 6 months. Maybe he'll be back towards the end of the season. Maybe the last couple of months is the hope. I think that's the aim for him, purely from, I think, the aspect of, no doubt, he wants to be involved in Euro 2024 with Croatia as well. So we'll see. Very much Spurs seeming to rule him out for the rest of the season, but fingers crossed, honestly. It would be fantastic for him. And obviously, aside from it being such a rubbish personal blow for him and at his age, and technically if he doesn't come back before the end of the season, that's him done to the end of his Spurs contract as well. So it may be, in that scenario, if that were the case, it might be the last we've seen of Ivan Perišić as well, which would be rubbish. Because looking at it from the team aspects and the club, you've heard me saying in these videos, he's been superb. Honestly, he's been so good from the bench. He was forging this really good kind of connection with Postecoglou. It felt like really understood each other, seemed to be willing to kind of play a part as this experienced veteran coming in and just having a massive impact on matches. Throughout pre-season, he was superb, and he's kind of carried it into the season. Obviously, you only need to look at the last game for perfect, adequate proof of what Ivan Perišić brings to the team. Amazing corner delivery, set-piece delivery, puts in that corner, Richarlison heads it home, and then that lovely instant flicked pass into Richarlison's path to set up Kulusevski for the winning goal. And that's what Spurs now are going to lose for many months ahead. Just so out of the blue. So weird. I mean, the way that you're always meant to look at it in any sport is that an injury for one person is an opportunity for another. I guess, having spoken about him recently, it could be for Bryan Gil. It could be that little opening he needs. I don't think he's back with the group yet, Bryan Gil, but I think it is pretty close, or he's heading... How do I put this? Let's judge that purely, I think, on his output on Instagram, which is never the best way to show stuff, but everything he's doing seems to be an increasing amount of him training with the word soon and hourglasses and all this sort of stuff, which would indicate it's soon. He's using that word himself. Someone reminded me today, I saw on social media, of one of the weirder things that I'd gone down of, doing some little weird skit about Conte saying, like, who's that child? And it was like, it's Bryan Gil, sir. but that's how little we've seen of him. Just been really unfortunate at Spurs, and just Conte barely used him. Ended up having to use him because of an injury crisis, and he did really well. Then he went back into the background, went on loan, didn't see him again, came back. Then he got an injury, this groin problem this summer, which meant he had to have surgery. And now he's kind of finally on his way back. And the thing for him, this is the problem for him, but also one slight cushion of the Perišić news, although I still massively believe they're going to miss his experience more than anything, as well as his quality on the ball. But you are looking at a position in the squad where there are so many people that can play on the left of the front three. I mean, aside from Perišić, you've got Sonny, Manor Solomon, Richarlison, Brennan Johnson, Brian Hill, obviously, when he comes back as well. Potentially Lo Celso could play there as well. I've certainly seen him play there a couple of times. Who else? Ryan Sessegnon, even. If he were to come back, and they were looking for somewhere where he could slot in, he could play a part there if required. Obviously, that was where he kind of flip-flopped a little bit for Fulham in his early days, being a winger and a left-back. So he can do that. Technically, Kulusevski being left-footed, I'm sure could do well there as well if required. Obviously, couldn't cut in onto his left foot. But do you see what I mean? That's probably... It's rubbish to lose him, whatever. But if there's any area of the squad that someone got injured in, it's probably the one place where there's so many bodies that can play there. Body sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? It's a classic kind of football journalism expression, or sports journalism impression. Expression, not impression. But yeah. Obviously gutted for Ivan Perišić. However, whatever age you are in your career or part of your career, it's still utterly rubbish. And obviously an ACL is a big one to come back from. And the thing about Perišić as well is over the course of his career, he's almost been like a bit superhuman. He hasn't really had many injuries that have kept him out for a long time. I'm wondering if this is one of the few, if not maybe the only serious injury he's had. There may be one other. I'm trying to remember back. When he joined, I remember writing a piece about how essentially bionic he is because of the lack of injuries he's had over his career, which has added to his longevity in his career and his fitness and everything. And yeah, just so frustrating. Just he was really in this good headspace with Spurs, and Postecoglou really liked what he was bringing to the team as well. So yeah, a sad kind of part way to start this video, but I feel as the latest thing that's happened, we had to kind of address that quite quickly, and yeah, just really sad. On to the fans forum last night. I was not there, as you know from the top of this video, and you probably knew anyway. No media allowed. I was at the under-21s match, although I did manage to get various things from the forum as soon as I got back. So if there's see, these eyes are very red and bloodshot. It was a very late night. Got back in from Colchester and then had to transcribe lots of stuff from the forum because it was good. It was a 90-minute forum. You can imagine what that's like in transcribing time. Stopping, starting, recording. Honestly, don't cry for me. It's fine. I'm not working down a mine or on the front line, and as a nurse or a doctor, I'm a guy sitting at a desk writing up quotes. But yeah, so if I say anything even weirder than normal in this video, it is because I kind of was a bit running on fumes, not too much sleep. But yeah, so if you weren't aware, if you completely avoided all news of this fans forum that took place, it took place at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in one of the very nice kind of events, conference room type things. I think looking over the pitch as well. Daniel Levy was there, Ange Postecoglou, Sonny was there. Beth England, obviously the captain of the women's team, and the women's team head coach Robert Villahan. It was split into, the first hour was kind of a Q&A with the host, who was Nihal. I'll always pronounce his surname wrong. I just kind of know him as Nihal Arthaniake, I think it is. BBC broadcaster guy, big Spurs fan, always seems to be doing little bits and pieces when the club do stuff like this. And other bits and pieces. And so what he did was the first hour or so, he would ask various questions, included submitted questions that had come in from fans as well. And then the second section, which was about the last half hour, was opened up to questions from the floor. And yeah, there was quite a few interesting things that came out of it. I think what we'll do is we'll split it into little sections. We'll start with all the Levy stuff because we don't hear from Daniel Levy much. And suddenly we got this opportunity to hear lots and lots of his thoughts on stuff. And yeah, he got asked some good questions. Yeah, there were some good questions in there as well. This is the thing. There's always this paranoia, isn't there, when these things happen? Like, oh, no one will ask good questions, all of this, and why didn't you follow up this and all this? And it's kind of quite interesting to see fans in the experience that we do in a press conference that, there's not always a chance for a follow-up question and there's blah, blah, blah and all this sort of stuff. And people want to ask different kind of questions in these environments. But no, he was asked some good ones. He was. Obviously, the biggest thing that came out from the night, which you probably saw come out while it was ongoing, because everyone was like, huh, and started tweeting it, was that he was asked whether Spurs had a buyback clause for Harry Kane as part of his move to Bayern Munich, to which Daniel Levy kind of replied, of course. That was it. Just simply, of course. Obviously, that surprised kind of quite a few people because no one had kind of reported that. We weren't entirely aware of that. I'm intrigued to see how it is reacted to in Germany. I haven't really looked today, to be honest, but I'd imagine they'll be scrabbling over there to try and get some kind of verification on that from their side. Although, you'd imagine it's in there if the Spurs chairman has said it publicly in a forum. I don't think he would just go, what can I say that would be, just a cool thing to get the fans on my side? And because you're just not going to make up that sort of thing. My gut tells me, and this is not saying this is absolutely the case, but I presume it would be something similar to what they had with Gareth Bale when he went to Real Madrid, in that Spurs got like a kind of a first option on him if he were to become available, or if another club were to bid, let's say. That's my guess of what it is. It's one of those where it was kind of said, but all parties around it kind of are not really saying anything now. And that's like, that's that. The chairman's spoken. And yeah, from all sides. Like I say, that's why I'm intrigued to see what comes out of Germany, because they may be a little bit more loose-lipped. It's always a bit iffy with kind of contracts and things like that. When you get into that area, there's sometimes little lines where anyone involved in it, whether it be through clubs, whether it be through around players or whatever, there's a little less, there's more reluctance to talk about it because it gets into a little bit of confidentiality and financial stuff and all this sort of stuff. Whereas I guess with Real Madrid and Bale, the documents gone out. I remember seeing those. I can't remember if they're meant to get out or not, but we ended up seeing those. So yeah, it's interesting to see exactly what it is. I think a lot of people kind of saw it and there's the instant reaction of Harry's coming home kind of thing. And you got some people that either have moved on or maybe a bit annoyed at Harry Kane for leaving, I don't know, who are like, oh, we don't need him back and stuff like that. I still maintain, as much as we're not talking about him much anymore, other than this, I still think in the Postecoglou team he would be incredible. But, it's not the case, so it doesn't matter anyway. And what I would also say about this is that Harry Kane still has to agree to it. It's not the case of just Spurs have a buyback clause for Harry Kane. Go get him, drag him. You can just imagine him being dragged by the hair all the way back to Tottenham. You're coming home. Whether you like it or not, get inside. It's not really that kind of scenario. It is very much Spurs could then make a bid. And if Harry Kane said, yeah, I'm all right, then it doesn't happen. But in the scenario where, and I do still believe that at some point Harry Kane will return to Tottenham in some kind of capacity, whether it is as a player, whether it is as a coach, whether it is as an ambassador one day, who knows. It would be lovely if he came back to finish off his playing career at Spurs, a bit like Teddy did all those years ago, and comes back to get that Premier League record and comes back to the 3 times Champions League winners, Tottenham Hotspur. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm guessing or dreaming. I don't know. But no, I do. It would be lovely if he does come back because I feel like his story is not over at Tottenham, and I think I said that when he left as well. So that was the Kane stuff. That came out pretty quickly. Just 2 words, of course, and it probably caused the biggest noise out of the whole thing. So that was interesting. What else did he talk about? There was a really good... Actually, it was tied in with... I think it was a 2-part. I think the Kane part was the second part of it. And the first part of the question was about Oh, actually, no, sorry, this was a different question. I'm mixing them up. This question was about kind of, did they learn any mistakes? I think this might have been from Nihal, actually. Did he learn from anything from the two previous managers? And I love the way that Nuno Espirito, I don't love the way it's very unfortunate that Nuno Espirito Santo has just been like, someone's just gone with an eraser, like, and just erased him from the history of Spurs. The amount of times people will just talk about the last two managers or Mourinho and Conte, and they'll forget there was this guy in the middle who's like, I'm here, I'm very disappointed, but I'm going to make you proud, especially disappointed in Alistair Gold. We're going to win a few games 1-0, and ultimately it's just going to be a bit rubbish. And it's going to head off into the sunset again, as Fabio Perisic's failed project. And yeah, so he was asked, what did he learn from those two managers? Obviously being Conte and Mourinho, not Nuno. And his answer was really interesting because he paused first and he went, like that. And that just made everyone laugh because it was a bit like, how are you going to be diplomatic here? Because let's be honest, everyone knows there was 250 people in the crowd, if you're not aware. Everyone knows, essentially, at the end of the day, they ended up being mistakes. I mean, you could argue that Conte, got them back into the top four, so it probably wasn't a mistake in that respect. But as a long-term option, of course, it was just, I was trying to think back, actually, because someone was talking about this with me, I can't remember, a couple of days ago. And I was trying to remember back to my early videos or chats or articles about both Conte and Mourinho. And I kind of feel like they were both of a similar ilk, that I could see it all ended spectacularly badly. And I could understand why it probably wouldn't work. But the optimist in me was still hopeful that they were both, trophy-winning managers that would maybe, some of that would rub off on Tottenham Hotspur. It didn't. It spectacularly didn't really with either of them. But yeah, so this was his answer. So after the and the big laughter, he said, maybe you'll be surprised by my answer, but I want to win as much as everybody else. But the frustration of not winning and the pressure from maybe some players and from a large element of the fan base that we need to win, we need to spend money, we need to have a big manager, we need to have a big name, it affected me. I'd gone through a period where we'd almost won. With Mauricio, we went through some very good times. We didn't quite get there, but we came very close. And we had a change in strategy. The strategy was, let's bring in a trophy manager. We did it twice, and look, you have to learn from your mistakes. They're great managers, but maybe not for this club. For what we want to play in a certain way, and if that means it has to take a little bit longer to win, maybe it's the right thing for us. That's why bringing Ange in was, from my point of view, the right decision. That's a fascinating answer. There's so many things. It's as close as you'll get to, I think, Daniel Levy just putting his hands up and going, I messed up. It's very close to that. He is essentially saying you have to learn from your mistakes. He's calling them mistakes. There is also an element of saying, but you told me to do it, which is a little bit funny. I must admit, when I was listening back to it, there was an element of, and he talks about the players, and obviously you're going to speculate and you're going to probably assume that someone like Harry is going to have been asked for his opinion. Harry Kane loved working Mourinho and Conte from all kind of, everything we'd heard from the scenarios and the situations then. And so he's almost like he's saying, yeah, Harry and the fans, you made me do it. It wasn't my fault. And then I'm probably being a bit harsh there. I think he is also owning up to an element of it, but I just thought that was quite interesting. And also, the thing for me was it affected me. Now, the reason I find that not most interesting, but particularly interesting in there, is that in a couple of supporters' trust meetings, in the minutes, it very clearly said, Daniel Levy said, I'm not affected by criticism or anything from the fans. It doesn't get to me. I just kind of block it out. Whereas here, he's quite clearly saying, it affected me. I said it at a time, many people said it at a time, I'm sure we all said it at a time, it was such a big departure from everything Spurs were trying to do, those two appointments. Both mainly short-term managers, neither particularly that focused on playing the kind of football that Spurs want to play, neither particularly focused really on developing young players. Both have had their successes with developing young players, but it's not really something they're known for. And they did seem odd fits, but I think probably we all kind of understood why they'd done it. Even though they might not have fit, you kind of understood the thinking of, okay, well, they've won elsewhere, they're going to win with Spurs. There's a lot more to it than that, and we know a lot of it comes down to financial backing and everything else, and the environment they come into and things like that. But yeah, I thought that was, for me, probably one of the, if not the most interesting answers out of all of it. More so than the Kane one for me, because I just kind of felt that's the kind of thing for me. When I talk about I want to just hear a little bit more from Daniel Levy. I don't mean it should be out every week, an email from Daniel's, Coy's Daniel and all this sort of stuff. Or yours, Daniel. I can't remember what it was now. But yeah, it's like, was it Coy's Daniel? It was Coy's Daniel. Yeah, I'm not saying he needs to put out a weekly email to us or do like this, like a YouTube video every couple of days. Hi everyone, Daniel Levy here. But I think I love this idea of the annual fans forum. There's nothing wrong with this being an annual thing. We're going to come to some quotes in a minute. Of the last one was 6 years ago. There's no reason other than COVID. That's a big reason, but around that, there's no real reason why this could not have been held. And yes, I know the people far more cynical than me will say, well, it's because in previous times things have been a bit tough and he hasn't wanted to maybe talk to the fans when things haven't been going well. But what I would say is it just gives, whether you agree with the answers or not, it at least explains decisions. And that's the key thing, and it humanises him slightly. It makes him less of a caricature to a lot of fans. And that's the thing. Even though fans may well still disagree completely, and that's absolutely their right to do, at least they may understand a reason for why it's been doing, or see the reason behind it, even if they think it's flawed logic or whatever. And it's the thing, because I've seen some people saying they're quite right, that very few chairmen are regular kind of voice and things like that, which is why I'm saying just this annual thing, just make it a yearly thing. There's no reason why it shouldn't be, because let's be honest, Daniel Levy's always saying he's a custodian of the club, custodian for the fans' kind of entity, their club. Then kind of, I guess, once a year, can he not be answerable to them? I just thought it kind of seems like a logical thing for me. And who knows? Maybe that's the way it will go from now on. We shall see. But, sorry, getting fired. And there you go. I wonder whether there'd be a little bit of the Harry Kane stuff. So there's reports coming in. Daily Mail saying Spurs do not have a straightforward buyback clause for Harry Kane, despite Daniel Levy's claims, with the England captain unlikely to consider potential return. Like I said, I wonder whether it is just a first option, and I also wonder whether it's a, and also why is he? He's not going to come out and say, "Oh yeah, I'd love to go back there right now." He's a Bayern player, and there are Bayern, fans and everything are not going to want to hear their star man saying, "Oh yeah, I want to go back one day." It's just not the way things are done. It's like I saw some fans the other day. I saw a little interview with him, and they were saying he was saying their fans or something about Tottenham fans. Again, it's all just part of the kind of integrating into the Bayern culture. It's so messy after a play goes. It's like a divorce, isn't it? It really is. So the Mail story, this is written by Sammy Mockbell, this is an excellent journalist. He said, multiple sources have indicated to Mail Sport that while there is a mechanism that could open the door to Spurs re-signing Kane, it is believed that the facility is not a simple buyback clause. Sources claim that the clause provides Tottenham with the first option on Kane if he was to ever to return to the Premier League, while there is not believed to be a fixed price, meaning Spurs would still need to negotiate a fee with Bayern. Tottenham's nor Kane's representatives are confirming details of the clause. More pertinently, however, there is doubt over whether Kane would even consider returning to North London while Levy remains at the helm. Dun, dun, dun. So there you go. There you go. I'm kind of quite pleased with that. My first option thing. I figured it probably was, as you can tell, because I said it about 10 minutes ago. So there you go. Right. back to the video. Sorry for the little kind of thing. That is that's what can happen, and it means also that I don't get to the end of the video and then people go, do another video on that. It's in there now. So yeah, back to Daniel Levy, funny enough, who according to the Mail, Harry Kane does not want to play for anymore. Again, I think it's all this period straight after, isn't it? It's one of those. I wonder now if Kane will become my Gareth Bale, in that every single transfer window I will be asked, is he coming back? Is he coming back? And I'll have them go, no, no. And then one day I'll go, do you know what? I think he is. Oh, but what a moment that was. Even if Jose Mourinho kind of didn't really use him much. So yeah, the next bit, Levy was speaking about Postecoglou and why he appointed him. He said, it feels like a lifetime ago now. Actually, it was very easy because Ange, I would say, is just a normal bloke, and it was wonderful to be able to have a conversation with him where we could just talk about anything, and he was very direct and honest. I like someone who just tells me it as it is. No one that plays games. No one that says one thing to me and then one thing to someone else. And then I think Nihal said something like, oh, you know, don't have to tell us who you're talking about or something like that. And there was like big laugh. And he was like, no, I'm not talking about anyone else. It was quite clear to say that, although it felt a little bit pointed. This club needs to go back to its roots. Honestly, there was a lot of pressure on me to bring in someone that was a big name, to which Postecoglou kind of leant across and said, Postecoglou is a pretty big name. Cue laughter. And Levy went back saying, I just wanted someone who understood our DNA, who would play attacking football that would give young players a chance, believe in the academy, would build a relationship with the fans and understand the resources that we have and don't have as a club and be part of a team. Ange, I have to say, is a breath of fresh air. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah, well, we know it. It's a breath of fresh air. I wouldn't say he's saying anything massively kind of interesting. Oh, what he did say, and this was another bit that I kind of found interesting, was that he was asked about the European Super League, and if there was a chance to go back into it again, would he consider it? And this was the bit where he was quite firm in having no regrets about, even though he apologised at the time for it. Just remembered that. He's said, firstly, under the new rules with the Premier League, we can't consider leaving the Premier League without their consent and the FA's consent. All I would say to you is that we always act in the best interest of this club, and I stand by the decision that we made, that we were prepared to have a conversation regarding the European Super League. It was not leaving the Premier League. It was about forming a new European league that would have continued at the same time as the Premier League. But we felt that it was a disaster for a lot of reasons, but I stand by my decision that I was acting in the best interest of the club. It's one of those, isn't it? I guess from his point of view, he's saying, well, we would have been left behind had it gone ahead. And obviously there were some people that were surprised that Spurs were even invited as part of it. So, yeah, it's kind of, I think that's where he's coming from. But it is also being a little bit closed off to the public feeling towards it, which is obviously was pretty much universal condemnation of it all. He was asked about increased matchday ticket prices. That was another thing as well. He was asked that a couple of times. I'd say it was the only one for me that I felt he slightly swerved. And that, I guess he kind of has a get out in the, well, I'll read the quotes for you. He was asked, it was quite interesting. It was a good question, actually. It was tied in with the naming rights, stadium naming rights. It was put to him the first time. Is there any thinking logic that had you got the stadium naming rights in place, then you wouldn't have had to kind of put this on the fans to increase prices to make the money? And he said, on naming rights, it's quite a complicated process. Unfortunately for us, we got interrupted by COVID. To do a naming rights deal, it's got to be done with a company coming to visit the stadium and experiencing it. So that interrupted the process. Since then, we've taken the decision that as much as we would like the right sponsor, it's really important to build our name globally, and all the events that we've had at the stadium have just enlarged the profile of this club. So for us, we want to find the right sponsor in the right sector at the right price. And in the meantime, unless we get that, we won't put a name on the stadium. We'd rather just have Tottenham Hotspur. About pricing, ticket pricing is an area I know everyone is sensitive to, and so are we. We haven't put up ticket prices until recently, despite the fact that they've been fixed for over 4 years. That's our general ticket prices. Premium ticket prices have gone up during the period. We're all facing increased costs. We've absorbed as much as we can, but you're right. If we had other sources of income, maybe we wouldn't have had to do it. But we're in a highly competitive industry, and everything we do is to maximise the income to invest in the team. We've agreed with the fan advisory board that we're going to do a long-term strategy paper on ticketing in general. It's not just about pricing, it's about access. It will involve away ticketing and may get into things like membership. We're going to do a complete review and look at how we can improve things. So yeah, there's a few things in there. The naming rights, we spoke about those in the last video. And again, he's kind of gone down that route of actually maybe it was more beneficial to have Tottenham Hotspur in the name. I think there is an element to that. I think there is also maybe addressing up with the fact that they haven't been able to get a deal that suited what their demand is or what they wanted from a price, I guess. So there's that. On the ticket pricing, yeah, like I said, I think he's kind of fallen back on this review that will take place, which presumably is not going to help anyone this season. So yes, he was asked again later on. It was a really good question to clarify exactly how much he thought was too much for a fan to pay to come and watch Spurs. And he was told it was quite a kind of a very strongly worded question in terms of, and don't just say it depends. I want an actual figure. It was a strong question, but it was kind of swerved. His answer was, we're all very conscious of the cost of coming to a football game. As I said before, we're going to go through a complete review of all our ticketing policies, but we're in the real world and the cost of operating a football club have gone up significantly. We're all facing difficult times and we had tried to restrict the increases of fans and we'll continue to do that. So yeah, did swerve it, didn't give a figure. I do think there is a logic and an element to the increased costs. Of course there is. Every club's got that. But it just feels like we're at a point now where it's so ridiculous, the price rise. The tickets, the cost of some tickets now. Although, again, many American fans telling me that, have you ever been to like an NFL game or a baseball game or anything like that? And the prices over there are just astronomical. So, I don't know. Maybe that's the way, unfortunately, it is going to go to that model of American sports and just being so big. What else did he ask? He was asked about in the Q&A bit, he was asked about the last few days of the recent transfer window, which he called stressful, very stressful. He was asked about signing James Maddison. And he kind of came out this little kind of joke about James need to learn that he can't come to the training ground in a red car. I've told him he'll learn. It was one of those. It was a bit like, oh, you just dubbed him in there for having a red car. I guess it was just a way to connect with the fans, little funny kind of aside. Yeah, and he spoke about the last 6 years since that previous fans forum. Obviously, he said a lot of things have happened. And he spoke a little bit about the pandemic again. He said, I think people will never really appreciate how difficult the pandemic was for us. We had just opened the stadium. We had at that time, and still do, have more debt than any other club in Europe. But luckily, it was all long-term finance. But all of a sudden, we didn't have any income. The whole financing of the stadium was predicated on having income, and it just stopped. Luckily for us, we were very highly regarded in financial markets, and we managed to get some assistance that enabled us to keep going. It was a very, very stressful period, and luckily the institutions that originally helped us, they refinanced the debt, and we repaid the Bank of England. It was a cost of about £200 million. So we kind of remember that at the time. And it was, to be fair, you know, I've seen and heard from many people within other clubs that absolutely were stuffed by COVID and the pandemic, and really, really were teetering on the brink at times as well. And I would say that whatever criticism you want to put Levy's way and the club's way in terms of their financial management of the club and whether you feel that they're too safe and don't take risks, I guess that did prevent us from being into a situation where, you know, we could have lost the football club or at least, you know, it could have been in real serious problems for many years to come. And a lot of the deals they did during that period were quite crucial. Obviously, they reversed the furloughing decision, didn't they? And yeah, it was, 200 million just being chopped out is no easy thing to absorb. And obviously, like you said, they kind of had to end up putting it into these long-term financial, what's it called? Long-term finance. This is the way I've literally just said it there. So that was all interesting stuff as well. He was asked about Postecoglou and the brand of football now. He said, it's simple. We've got our Tottenham back. I just feel that we're seeing football that we used to see, and that's all that we want, to see the players give everything and play attacking football. We want the fans to have a connection with the players and the staff to have a connection with the players. You feel it throughout the club, at the stadium, even on non-match days, at the training centre. We're together. It's so noticeable. What else was he asked? He was asked how he can support Postecoglou to go on a proper cup run. And he said, we need to provide all the conditions, whether that be appropriate players, facilities. The fans need to get behind the team, and we all need to be one. That gives you the best chance of winning. But Ange has won things at other clubs, so maybe it's a question for Ange and what we need to do, essentially, for him. And he spoke a little bit about the academy and saying that he believes Ange is going to bring the academy and the first team back together again, because there's a lot of talent in the academy, of which I saw last night, which we're going to talk about a little bit as well. So that's it. That was most of the Levy stuff, really, pretty much all of the Levy stuff. And I just go back to my earlier point. It's just crucial, to be honest, I feel, for him just to talk to the fans occasionally, and it doesn't have to be any more regular than once a year, but just kind of essentially make yourself accountable, answer some questions. That's it. For the sake of an hour a year, hour and a half a year. Just to give them a better understanding of how their club is being run. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. And to be honest, I know the people that really, really don't like him are going to not like hearing this, but I do always feel that after these, he comes out of it, I think he comes across quite well. There's definitely swerving of questions, and there definitely is sometimes too much financial talk for me. But I do feel that on the whole, he comes out of it in a slightly better position than he was before it. And for me, it would make it a no-brainer for him to do this as an annual thing. But we'll see if that happens or not. What else do we have? We had Sonny stuff. Sonny was quite funny, as always. He talked about being the captain and the moment he was made captain, and how he didn't actually know anything until the meeting with all the players he was going to become captain. And he said, it was the most nervous moment of my life because I had to go and give a speech to players, and I was looking back at the video. I just kept clapping. Why did I clap? It was surreal. And he did. I said that at the time. He just kept doing this thing. Come on. And it was fascinating. It was just obviously his go-to kind of thing that he decided he was going to do. He said, but being at a huge club and being captain is such an honour, and I'll do my best. Also, the team is doing well. That day was the biggest surprise because I didn't expect it, but it was also a special day for me. And he spoke about being captain of South Korea since 2018 World Cup, obviously having done that for half a decade, and that's kind of helped him in that regard. Spoke about last season being a really tough one for him. He said, it was obviously a tough year for myself and obviously the team. It was tougher because I expect more from me and the team is down, not performing well. I blame myself, firstly, because it's a big part of this club I played. I started every single game. I feel like I let the club, the players and the manager down. It was a really hard time, but different reasons, pain, style, whatever. We can sit here all day and talk about last year. The thing is, it made me even stronger. I've been in professional football starting in Germany 18 years. Now I'm here 8 or 9 seasons. It's been a long journey. I thought, now I'm an experienced player. I've faced all the different things and the tough times. Last year, I would say, was probably the toughest season I've faced, but I also learned the most, even more than when I was 18, which is very, very surprising to me because I'd never expect that I was going to learn something to make me stronger. But that's why I'm here, coming into the next season, named club captain. Another big step forward, and because I had tough times, I can face this and be stronger. It was a tough moment, definitely this part of my life as a player and a human being made me stronger. Yeah, It was really good. Sonny spoke really well last night. Obviously a lot of it, the questions were aimed at Daniel Levy because it's such a rare chance to talk to him, and Postecoglou obviously speaks as well as he does. But I felt that, all of the other three, Sonny, Beth England and Villeham as well, Robert Villeham, the women's coach, all spoke very well. And Sonny was good. What else did he talk about? Spoke about his hat-trick with Burnley. Spoke about the vibes in the changing room as well. It's quite an interesting little story. He said, the changing room, the club, the stadium, the vibes are really, really positive. For example, today I had a doping after training, which is when they come in and test them for any illegal substances in their system. And he said, and the guy said, wow, he changed the vibes. Obviously talking about Ange, because last year they turned up and they could see us being down. Today he came and said the vibe is much better than last year and looks really, really positive, which is what you're looking for. When you're positive, you're playing well. Players definitely working hard, really, really hard, because the training sessions are really hard. They're playing to win. They want to win, to give something back to our fans. So definitely the vibe is really good and positive. It was asked about North London Derby, to which he said it's a special game for them as well as, but for us too. It's nice kind of answer about we have to work hard. We're working hard in the week. The players are ready and looking forward to it. So I'm pretty sure that they don't want to face us at this moment. I guarantee we're going to give everything. The result I can't promise you, but one thing I can guarantee you is we're going to give everything for this club, especially for Sunday. It's good. He really sounds like a captain. I know he is. He has been a captain for years for South Korea, but he just spoke so well. And again, this is when people that would told me they were surprised that he was made captain, and then you hear him talking at this kind of stuff, and speaks so well. Fantastic stuff. That was all of Sonny's stuff, really. Postecoglou was also, of course, up there and speaking away. I'm trying to think of something. He had a lot of long answers. He spoke about his dad. I'm not going to talk about his dad's stuff because it was a lot of stuff we've heard before, but it was really nice, saying there wasn't much there wasn't much bedside chats and cuddles and giggling. Talk about his dad just kind of essentially collapsing on the couch at the end of a long, hard-working day, and their connection was football. It's lovely stuff, and I don't want to sound like I'm dismissing it, but it is stuff that obviously, if you've watched these before, you'll have heard it before, and he's spoken about it a couple of times in press conferences. I think I asked him, his very first press conference, actually, I asked him about his dad. So it's my fault if you've heard it before. He asked about surprising Sonny with the captaincy. He said, I didn't want him to, rather than me telling him and there being an awkward silence between us, I just felt it was a moment he should share with the people most important to him, and that's the players. For me, it was an easy decision making him captain. He said his first impressions of Daniel Levy. He was asked, whenever I've spoken to people who represent the organisations you're potentially going to join, it's about trying to understand the person, trying to understand his feelings about the football club and where they're at. With me, people have figured out that there are certain things that I have really strong beliefs about and see whether there is a fit there. I sense pretty much what Daniel said tonight about what he wanted from this football club in terms of the style, the environment for young players, the connection with the fans. It was all stuff that resonated with me. That's the most important thing for me, that I got a clear understanding of what they were looking for and I knew I could deliver it. And that's what you're looking for, and that's what the discussion was. Because ultimately, if the discussion went a different way, as great an opportunity as this would be, and it's a fantastic football club, since I've joined it, I've realised what a big, well-resourced club it is, and it's got fantastic supporters. But for me, I wasn't just going to jump into the opportunity because of that. It needed to be a good fit, because otherwise it wouldn't work. It would be a square peg in a round hole. Spurs have had a few of those. Honestly, they're a club of square pegs just not fitting into holes. I think there's a lot to that. From my perspective, that was, by the way, that was my opinion, not him saying that. I think there's a lot to that. From my perspective, that was the main thing. When I had a discussion with Daniel, I didn't know which way they'd go, but if they did go with me, I felt really comfortable I could fulfill the responsibilities. And it was quite interesting that I kind of felt like every time Daniel Levy wanted to get a cheer, and he was like, and that's why we got Ange, and everyone go, hey! It was like his little party piece. And then I chose Ange, as if to say, criticise anything you want, but I picked him. I feel like eventually, they knocked on a few doors and eventually got the right man. The right man opened the door. But what else did he say? He spoke about the winning trophies stuff, and again, similar thing about not just winning any old trophy for the sake of it, but actually building a bit of a dynasty and something that can be a prolonged kind of form of success for the club. Again, whether you believe in that or not is another thing. Spoke about being more than just a coach that he used to have to be. Again, the Postecoglou answers are long. The reason I'm kind of skipping slightly is, whereas with Levy answers, it's about 3 or 4 parts. With Ange's answers, they're about... It would take me probably a good 5 to 6 minutes to read each one. They're long answers. But yeah, just to paraphrase, essentially saying that you need to be more than just a coach now. You need to have a kind of a lot more to your your armoury as a coach, I guess is probably the way to put it, because the world has changed. And he says you've got to stay relevant in your messaging. I remember him listening to him in podcasts saying that. That's one of the key things for him, is adjusting the way he delivers his messages to reach a changing audience, as it were, or changing players. Said really good stuff about Sonny, fantastic footballer. Everyone knows he's a fantastic footballer, but he's a brilliant human being, mate. You can be both. That was good. I didn't have it in there, but it was a really nice bit about, I forgot about this, where Sonny was talking about, when they went and did the huddle pre Brentford, and about him texting Romero and Maddison the night before, and we spoke about this at the time, and he told them that, that's what I'm going to do. I want to do the huddle in front of the fans, in front of the away fans. And he actually admitted, which we didn't hear him at the time, he said, yeah, Romero never got back to me though. I'm still waiting for his reply, which is why when we went over to the fans, he just looked really confused. It's like, he must have blue ticked it. Surely he must have read it, unless he just couldn't get the translator thing working on his phone. I don't know, but that made me chuckle. Just this idea of Romero like, why are we all going over here? Maybe he sent it to the wrong number. Who knows? But yeah, that did make me chuckle. What else we got? He said, that was a nice line. He said, that's one of the greatest gifts I have in my role, that I get to share a space with people like Sonny Postecoglou. That was really nice. There's a load of mutual respect there. You can see it in every way they talk about each other. On the North London derby, obviously, he spoke about his experience of Celtic against Rangers, and even knowing when the Amazon guy was at his door, he'd know whether they were Rangers or Celtic support, depending on how they delivered the package in his house. He either threw it at me or wanted a selfie, he said, and he's excited by the derby, looking forward to it. We want to be involved in big games, overcome the challenges before us. We'll go there and play our football and see where that takes us. I'm so nervous about that game. We'll talk about that at the end. What else we got? Yeah, he kind of spoke more about just not winning for the sake of it, but actually creating something long and lasting and exciting for the fans for a prolonged period of time. That was difficult to say. He said they spoke about the time wasting at half-time on Saturday, and he said it didn't matter how much was added on. For us, we work hard. We're the fittest team in the competition, so if they want to waste time and play an extra 30 minutes, we're ready to go. That's an interesting line. Fittest in the competition. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because we've kind of always led to believe that under Conte they were like the super fit team, and under Postecoglou it seems to still be the case as well. There's good stuff. I will read this out. He was asked about the squad and transfers and kind of how that's all, what his thoughts essentially were on the window. He said, we started really well in the way the lads have embraced the football we want to play and their ability to put into practice what we're trying to build, even in terms of the squad at the moment. We've had a really positive transfer window in that you can see all the players we brought in are already contributing, and that's what you want out of it. We need to keep building the squad. It was never going to happen in one window. It wasn't about bringing in any kind of player. We obviously had more targets in this window, but I made it easy and difficult for Daniel because I had very few I wanted, in which made it easy for him, but difficult if we couldn't get them, because I wasn't giving him 3 options. I just don't want anyone coming in. It's got to be specific. I felt it was a really positive window, and that gives us the opportunity now to build for what's ahead. We want to be playing European football, be in the Champions League. To do that, you need a strong squad. You get injuries, you have midweek games. We'd be playing Champions League tonight or tomorrow night, and with the squad we have at the moment, we probably wouldn't be able to cope with it. That's the reality. That was always part of the plan. We're going to build in terms of the way we play. We're not changing, mate. We'll go out and scare the life out of them. So there was some really interesting stuff in there about how essentially he was saying to Levy, I want that one, and that was it. Essentially, get him or we don't move for anyone kind of thing. And which tells you a lot about, when people say, they went for the cheap option, went for this and all of that. Essentially, Postecoglou was very clear on who he wanted. And sometimes that would be informed by the data and the recruitment staff. But he would always decide exactly who he wants, and he would research them thoroughly to know. So that was really interesting. Last day of the window, he said, you hope things fall in place, but they may not. There's a lot of moving parts. For me, the most important thing was we got young Brennan Johnson in. We had other targets who just seemed like they were going to happen. I think weren't going to happen. That's meant to be. Brennan I was really keen on. He's the right profile of a young guy. He's going to fit really well with the dressing room and the way we want to play. Yeah. And actually, he was also asked about the use of data for recruitment. And he said it's hugely important. The world is ever changing, particularly in that space. It's fair to say I went through school with a paper and pen, so fair to say it's not my expertise. We employ a lot of people in that space, like most clubs now, where there pretty much isn't any hidden gems anywhere. Every club knows every player out there. What is important is how you use that data. And I still feel it's about having a clear idea of what you want. So that data relevant to you becomes important because there's so much out there. It's an ever-expanding space, and all top clubs realise it's an important part of identification. But I still think the most important bit is having a clear idea of what you're looking for. And for us, that means I need to see them in our team, playing our football. So when we're talking about, and there's so many fantastic footballers, and sometimes there's so little between choosing between them. Sometimes it comes down to their fit in terms of the way we want to play. Sometimes it comes down to what kind of person they are. So that final bit goes beyond the data. But certainly every club now understand that it's your starting point. You use the data in the right way. Instead of looking at 500 players, you look at 10 to 15. It's ever changing. There's a lot of smart young people working that space who we're constantly trying to tap into. Yeah, which I thought was really interesting. You know, you've heard me banging on about how Spurs have been trying to improve the analysis of their data and use of it this year. And yeah, that was a nice insight into how Postecoglou believes in it as well. And then there was a lovely moment at the end of it all when Nihal was about to wrap it all up. And Postecoglou was like, no, we've got a question here. It was a really nice moment. He'd spotted that this young chap, Owen, at the front had been or near the front, had been wanting to ask a question. Patiently waiting for it, and he just said, yeah, go on, and this is going to be the best question. And it was for him as well. It was about kind of how much he wants to win this season and what he wants to do, and it was a really lovely moment. And Owen's mum, I think, is Dee, who is the chair of Spurs Ability, and I was just had a little look at kind of her Twitter feed and the lovely photos of Owen enjoying the evening. It just looks like he had the best time. And I know, having seen the tweets beforehand, how excited he was about the night. And it was a lovely moment. It was just another massive tick in the box for Ange Postecoglou, becoming a bit of a star, isn't he, really, at Spurs, and winning everyone's hearts and minds. Because, you could see Owen's face, how excited he was at asking the question and everything. And no doubt how proud Dee was at him asking it as well. It was lovely. Lovely little moment. And honestly, look at the photos on Twitter. He just looks so pleased to be there. It's lovely. And especially meeting Sonny, who I think he was especially excited to meet. I've tweeted it on my timeline, so you can have a little look on there. And obviously this was also about the women's team. Can't skip over that as well. And both, like I say, Robert Villaham and Bethany England spoke really well. With Villaham, there's a real sense, I get, a concerted effort that he and Ange Postecoglou have both been brought in very much as almost like a unit. They both share very similar beliefs in the way that football should be played. And I think that's to have a women's team that very much, and the men's team that are very symmetrical, I guess, in the way that they play, and this identity that can now run through the club. Again, which makes it all the more bewildering, despite the explanation of why they just went so far in a different direction with Mourinho and Conte, because it just feels like everything's suddenly aligned again. Robert Villaham was asked about his start to life at the club. He said, I was hired to make sure we play a certain style of football that the fans will like. The best way to do that is to make sure we play attacking football, but we also need to win games. And he was quite good on that. He was kind of saying, because someone asked him about playing at the stadium more regularly, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and he was like, to paraphrase massively, I want to get the team up to the standard where they can be playing there every single week rather than playing there for just the big games. He wants to really raise their level to something very different. It was exciting. He's a good talker as well. And Beth England she talks superbly. She's really inspiring stuff. There was a real kind of rousing, I can't remember now and I haven't written it down, but there was a little talk about the women's team and how, as captain like that, and how they're going to really push on now. And everyone, you could see everyone in his room was like, we're going to walk through walls for this captain. Her and Sonny as captains really showed what they're going to be about this season. She was good, and she was talking about how being made captain, how she feels like she's been treated like royalty now. And she was also asked about the club's support of the LGBTQ plus community, and she said, "For me, being a very proud gay person, I think it's important to be at a club where you feel respected and inclusive. I'm very aware that the club has good interaction with proud lily whites to make sure that everyone is on the same page, doing everything we can to make sure everyone feels safe and inclusive at this football club. We don't want any form of discrimination. I feel very much part of this family and included for the person I am. And I hope that every player and fan feels the same love and support that I feel from this football club." Very good talker. Very good talker. And a brilliant player as well. A lioness and one of Spurs, another kind of person that's played in a World Cup final for Tottenham Hotspur. Fantastic. Obviously, she had her surgery recently, so we'll see her back eventually, and really hope the women's team can now push on as well. So it feels like an exciting new era for them as well, and what they can do going forward. So it seems like a really good event. Like I say, I think pretty much from what I could tell, the whole thing went online, so that's good that everyone gets to see everything. I think all the questions and answers were on there. Like I say, most were answered, some very slightly swerved. And we'll see what comes of the review of the ticket prices. I think that was the main one that was swerved. But on the whole, I think it was a positive experience. I'm sure people will find negative things to say about it. But for me, it was more than we knew. It was more explanations than we had been party to before. And like I say, I did feel like it humanised Daniel Levy that little bit more, which I think is necessary, because as always, with anything we don't understand, we need to get more of an insight into why things happen and why decisions are made, and that's the only thing you can get by the people actually speaking. I'm sure the 250 people in the room loved being with Sonny and Postecoglou and Beth England and Martin Villaham as well, Robert Villaham as well. But I think the Levy aspect of it all was just a crucial thing that needs to happen more often. But there you go. I banged that drum enough. So that was the forum. I was not there. I was at the under-21s game at Colchester, which was a really, really terrific match. It was brilliant. I'm really going to try to get to as many youth games as I can this season, because the first team fixture schedule is now so much lighter. So it's going to allow me to get to a fair old chunk of these games, which is good. More so the home ones than the away ones, unless they're more local. But so if you're not aware what the game this was, it's the EFL Trophy, which a few Premier League sides have their under-21s in, but they play against the senior sides from the Football League. So Spurs took on Colchester United, League 2 side, who, to be fair, they changed all 11 players up from their match at the weekend. But these are still, a lot of them, senior players. And it's a great experience when they're coming, these 18, 19-year-olds of the Spurs team, 20-year-olds coming up against these senior players in the Football League, and a good barometer for them. And they were brilliant, honestly. Wayne Burnett's side this season, it's really good for Wayne Burnett, because I've said this before, but last season he had a team that was absolutely ruined by injuries, and he would have people taken away by Conte for static training sessions on the eve of games, on the eve of his own training sessions and everything. And the team suffered for it. This year, he's got a fully fit squad, and he's a very good coach. Everyone I talk to about Wayne Burnett raves about his coaching ability. And you can see it out there, the way they play, honestly. They set up in a kind of a 4-3-3, which was kind of a 4-2-3-1 at points, with Jamie Dolly sitting just in front of Brooklyn's Lyons Foster and Matthew Craig. And they blew Colchester off the park. Honestly, had it been better finishing in the first half, by half-time it would have been more than 1-0, but it ended up 5-0 at the end of the game. Spurs just... I've said this in the last video or the one before, there's a lot of elements of the way the first team play and the way they play, and this had been there before Postecoglou came along, so it's going to be a really nice production line for them. Like I say, we had Alejo Veliz was there. He had it was pre-agreed that he would come on for the last half hour or so. Obviously, he'd just come back from an injury, and they wanted to just get some sharpness and game time into his legs. And I watched him afterwards doing loads of warm down, like the old pitch long runs, and loads of kind of weight stuff by the side of the pitch as well, and stretching. and various things he went through after the game. Ashley Phillips played as well. And also just thank you very much to the very many, very lovely people that came over and said hello. Because it's a little bit different. Whereas I guess in the press box at Spurs, I'm a little bit more kind of fenced off a little bit. I'm in my own area, and there's all there's kind of barriers people can't really get over. And I'm saying that they'd leap over to come and see me or anything, but in this at the JobServe Community Stadium at Colchester, which isn't that far from me, it was all open and people were able to just come up and say hello, and everyone was lovely. It was really, really lovely to speak to a lot of people that watch these videos and read my stuff and listen to the podcast with Guesty, and it was really nice to meet you all. Thank you very much. Thank you for being very pleasant and nice, and it was very for someone like me, it was all very kind of humbling is maybe the word, just to hear people say lots of nice things. It was really nice being the key word, clearly. So yeah, Spurs won 5-0. 2 goals from Jamie Donnelly, 2 from Jude Soonsup-Bell, and 1 for Will Lancashire as well. Before I even get to anyone else, Jamie Donnelly was outstanding. Jamie Donnelly, I've seen a fair bit of him play, and he's a player that I like. You'll hear me mention him a fair few times. What he is now developed into this season is very exciting. As I said in the last video, he got a new contract earlier this year, a 4-year deal, which is unusual for the young players. They normally get 2 or 3 year deals, and he got a 4-year one, which kind of said a lot about, I guess, the belief in him. However, I wouldn't say, from what I understand, he's been training with the first team that much, if at all, this season. And I kind of feel like he's now on this one-man mission to say, Mr. Postecoglou, hello. He has been sensational. In the Premier League 2, he's got 6 assists and a goal. He was nominated for Player of the Month. I don't think he won it, though. And then last night, honestly, he ran the game. Like I say, playing at this kind of, however you want to see it, as the middle of the 3 behind a striker or as the tip of a little triangle in the midfield ahead of Lyons, Foster and Craig, he was superb. He'd had a little injury recently, which stopped him playing for the England under-19s. But I just love the fact that there's a little bit of the Harry Kane about him. And I'm not saying he's an ex-Harry Kane, I'm not saying anything, but he's got a similar trait in that he loves to come deep with the ball. At one moment, he can be in the box and be a finisher, and in the next moment, he can be deep and spraying passes around the pitch. And he was everything good they did came through him. Creative force. He was involved in loads of the goals, if not all of them. Nice assist for Soonsup-Bell's second goal as well. He scored 2 terrific goals himself, to be honest. The first was like this kind of touch and composed finish in the box, and the second was a really nice low curling effort. He was honestly superb. My prediction is if he keeps this up, if he keeps going down this road, Postecoglou will have him in first team training sessions to have a proper look, because the academy staff, Wayne Burnett, is going to be pushing him forward so much. Because if he's going to play like that, he was untouchable, honestly. If I was doing player ratings, which I didn't do, he would have got a 10. He was that good. In a little moment towards the end, we had a bit of a swing out of the leg at someone that got away from him. And I was like, don't ruin it with a red card. But his performance overall was excellent. And actually, there was a nice little kind of side story to it, is that I think he's from the Colchester area, or very close. So he was kind of back on his home ground, or home turf. What I would say as well is, so I'm Colchester United and I'm watching that, I think the assistant manager took charge of their team. I'm looking at Jamie Donnelly and thinking, it's really worth me having a look in January, maybe see if we can get him into our squad, because he's ready to play Football League football. Definitely. I really think he is. Keep an eye on Jamie Donnelly. Honestly, you'll hear so many names. And he's never one that, other than maybe from me and a couple of others, he's really pushed that much. But he is brilliant. He's such a good player. And another one from the base catalogue of players at Spurs. So, yeah, keep an eye on him. Jude Soonsup-Bell was very good. I've seen him a couple of times. This was the first chance to really look at him when he's fully fit and flowing. And, yeah, he had first half, he was a little bit wasteful. A few shots that flew over the bar. Second half, he was sublime. Honestly, he was excellent. He was just a constant dribbling force. He's very good on the ball. I didn't realise that about him. His dribbling's excellent with the ball. His first goal was a dribble inside and he smashed it home. Second one, Veliz did a really nice kind of run to draw away the defender. Soonsup-Bell ran into that space and just did a lovely curling effort into him. And Donnelly scored a couple of similar goals, actually. He was very good, Jude Soonsup-Bell. And again, he in the Premier League too, so he's got 4 goals and 2 assists in the first 4 matches as well. He's 19. I would think, if I'm him, I would definitely be looking for a loan move in January. Because I think you've got someone like Will Lancashire, who we'll talk about in a moment, who can kind of be the lone man or the front man for the under-21s. They've got quite a few attacking options. I think they could allow Soonsup-Bell to go off and get some first-team experience somewhere. And I think he is another one that is ready for that step. He's very, very good. At the back, Ashley Phillips and Alfie Dorrington together, both shut out Colchester pretty much completely, other than the odd little moment. Ashley Phillips he's such a big lad. He's such a strong, kind of imposing force. Very good on the ball. Dorrington, I always think Dorrington's superb. There would have, there'd have been a little bit concerned, I'd imagine, when Phillips came in that, oh no, Dorrington's going to get knocked down the pecking order, when he was kind of felt like he was getting there and he might be on the fringes. I think if that means he heads out on loan, I don't think that's the worst thing for him. Spurs do have a habit of sometimes not sending players out on loan, keeping them within the first team squad setup and then essentially making them stagnate a bit. So if Alfie Dorrington does head out on loan, I don't think that's the worst thing for him. He's so comfortable on the ball. He's a real imposing presence as well. I honestly think he's on a similar level to Ashley Phillips, for me. I remember watching the game, was it at Blackburn? It was on the day that Spurs were playing Man U at home, and I watched it as I was travelling to the game, and then when I was there, and I actually felt on the day, it was Phillips' first match for Spurs, the under-21s, I actually felt Dorrington was the better player on the day. And I do feel that they're at a similar standard, but obviously Ashley Phillips has played 8 times in the Championship, so he's just got that little bit more experience to him. But honestly, keep an eye on Dorrington. He's going to be superb. And to be fair, I could have said any of the back 4 last night, because Tyrell Ashcroft was excellent down the right. One very nice assist as well. Charlie Sayers did very well as well. He made one superb sliding block at the back. I'm intrigued to see what happens with Charlie Sayers, whether he'll end up making it to Spurs. My gut tells me maybe he heads off to the Football League, but he's a talent. He had a bit of an injury. I think he had an eye problem that he came back from, and now he is fully flowing again and playing very well. So I'll be intrigued to see if he heads off somewhere on loan in January as well. There's quite a few candidates to do that. Because that's the thing, most of the loans this year have come from the first team. I'm trying to think if there's any under-21s. I mean, technically you could put likes of Parrott and Scarlett and Devine in there, I suppose, but they were all kind of part of the first team setup in a way. I think there'll be a fair few loans as well. Like I said earlier, Will Lancashire, I thought he looked good up front. He and Soonsup-Bell both had injuries that kind of ruined the end of their seasons last year. And Will Lancashire, he looks that little bit younger, which he is. But he had a bit of a thankless task at times in the first half up front on his own. But he did well. We worked really hard. Ended up, got his goal, headed in the ball. I think it may have been from Ashcroft's cross. Kind of a low stooping header. And he also set up, I might have written it down. Yeah, he set up Soonsup-Bell's first goal as well. And bear in mind, he was signed for, I think it was about 2 million reported at the time from Sheffield United last summer. Sorry, summer before last. He's a talent as well. And like I say, if Soonsup-Bell heads off, very much you've got Lancashire can be there. And I was glad for him because Veliz replaced him. And when he came on, just before he came on, Lancashire scored his goal. And I was glad. It was as if to say, okay, all right, you've done your part, don't worry. We can now give this prearranged little bit of time for Veliz as well. Iago Santiago, he's a tricky player. 20-year-old, left winger. Had there not been so many people ahead of him, I think if Perishic's injury maybe might have opened the door for him to get a little bit of a look in, but I just think there's too many in front of him. I would imagine he's one that's going to have to head off to kind of build his reputation, but he's fun to watch. He's very direct, very good on the ball. Another one that was nominated for Premier League 2 Player of the Month because he's had a cracking start to the season as well. 4 goals and assists. And he's good fun to watch. Spurs have a habit of kind of having really good wingers to watch in the academy, and I think he's another one that's come through the ranks. Who else impressed me? Like I say, Lance Foster and Craig were good, solid in the middle. Craig was the captain, very, very good with the ball and shutting down Colchester when they got into the middle. Josh Keeley, I thought, had a good game. Good distribution, the goalkeeper, Young Republic of Ireland under-21 keeper, made a terrific save from a header at one point, pushed it onto the crossbar, and I think it was Dorrington hacked it away at the last second after that. But no, he looks good. He'd lost his spot to Luca Gunter a couple of times in Premier League 2 games, but he looks like he's kind of coming back strong now. He went off obviously on the tour with the first team in the summer. Very good young player. On a good development curve at the moment for him. He's so young. And then Alejo Veliz. He was, like I say, a unit, a big player. I was kind of watching him in the warm-up as well. And he was towering over a few of the coaches that were working with him as well. Obviously, everyone was kind of waiting to see what he'd be like. Imagine, like I say, spending your birthday in Colchester when you've come from Argentina. It's probably not what you had expected 6 months ago that he'd be spending his 20th birthday. He got 28 minutes of normal time plus that little bit of added time, obviously. I'd say, in terms of he's a guy that's just come back from an injury, he looked a little bit rusty in his finishing. You felt that. It was a few one-on-ones he went through and he snatched at his shot slightly. But what I would say really impressed me, and you could see where he's a top flight player, is his hold-up play and his movement more than anything. His movement was excellent. Like I say, for Soonsup-Bell's second goal, he drew the defender away with a really good run. And yeah, he's got that tactical intelligence of kind of knowing where he needs to be on the pitch. That impressed me a lot. He's got a nice touch. One of the one-on-ones was him kind of touching it past the defender to get around him. And there was one moment where I think it was a foul anyway, but he just showed really nice footwork to kind of stop the player getting the ball. Like I say, he has got the physique for the Premier League. And like I said, afterwards, he was really kind of put through his paces. They kind of gave him look like a pre-season of sorts, I guess, to really get him ready for what's to come under Postecoglou. And, you know, I've said this before, but he got 11 goals in 23 matches in the Argentinian top flight. This is not a completely inexperienced 20-year-old. You know, he is a finisher as well. Those stats tell you that, despite the bit of rustiness last night. And I do wonder, Postecoglou said about Veliz that, you know, you wouldn't expect to see him get any minutes until the second half of the season. I do wonder whether anything's changed in that regard, because obviously he only started to see him in training on Thursday. Did what he saw in training maybe make you think, oh, hello, actually, there's a prospect? And obviously he'll have got good reports from this game as well. It'll be interesting to see whether he plays another game or two for the under-21s. You'd imagine he would to keep him sharp. But yeah, if he can impress them in training, and obviously I'm trying to think, he would have said that before Kane left, although he says he knew he was leaving. But if he can be an option from the bench, if he can force his way into that position, then all he needs is one chance. And if he takes that chance, bang, he's suddenly a regular feature in the team and in the squad. So yeah, something to keep an eye on with Veliz. But yeah, it's brilliant when you see that first kind of steps at Tottenham. And that was cool to say. We were there for his debut. Me and 498, I think it was Spurs fans, made the trip. I think the crowd was about 1,500, something like that, maybe more. And Spurs, obviously, a lot of the local area, I think, is quite Spurs-based or Spursy. I don't want to use that word. And they made the effort to go there and watch it on a mild night in Colchester. And they got treated to a lovely display of football, 5-0. It was very much felt like you were watching a lot of the things the first team do, which is great. And fascinated to see how Wayne Bennett's team do this season, because they're already top of Premier League 2. And the way they're going, they can keep this up, and the attacking movement and options and fireplay. I mean, you look at that front line, you've got Santiago, Lancashire and Soonsup-Bell. You've got Donnelly behind them. You've got Veliz may play the odd game or two. And that's just the attack. And they're creative. They all can dribble. They can use the ball. They can shoot. And then you go further back and you've got experienced Lance Foster. You've got Craig, who's made his Premier League debut as well. And you've got defenders like Dorrington and Phillips. You might be hitting Indy Bark in the background. He's very excited about this under-21s team as well. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how they push on this season as well. And Stuart Lewis's under-18s as well. You know, I haven't got to see much of them. I'm probably going to try to get to see them in the FA Youth Cup, which I think starts in December. But certainly we'll try to see some of their games as well when I can fit them in around what goes on with Postecoglou's team. What else happened in midweek? Got a couple of loan games for some of the youngsters. Dane Scarlett finally got his first bit of action with Ipswich. He got 19 minutes from the bench in their 1-0 win at Southampton. Big experience for him. Championship game at Southampton. That's huge for him. And the thing with Ipswich, they're just flying at the moment. Kieran McKenna, former Spurs man, he is smashing it with them. They're right up there in the Championship. And I've seen some people saying, it's a bad move for Scarlett. He's not going to get game time. It's a good move. It is a good move because he's playing at a team that are flying. Yes, it might mean that he's going to have to sit and wait sometimes. But when he comes into matches, it's going to be high-pressure matches. It's going to be matches where he's going to have to be switched on from the start. And he's going to play against teams like Southampton that were Premier League teams last year. I think it's a good move. And now it's down to him to kind of show if he wants to be a Premier League player and a Tottenham player, which everyone hopes and thinks he's going to be, then he's going to have to turn it on in the Championship, even at this early age of, 19? I'm trying to think if he turned 20 recently. I think he's 19. Yeah, that was him. Alfie Devine also started again for Port Vale. 63 minutes to his name as they lost 3-2 at home to Burton Albion in League One. But again, more experience for him. And the fact that he's starting matches right now is massive. That shows the belief in him. And hopefully his development curve is going to be huge as well. So that's terrific. I think they were the only two that played in midweek, unless I missed someone. And then we have the North London Derby this weekend. We do. I said it before, but I hate it, that one. Especially the away one. I do not like it. It never goes well, other than many, many years ago. Yunus Kabul's winning goal. The press box, I hate the way they all stand up in front of it, the fans. It's always arguments. I'm never normally in that front row. I'm normally a little bit further back. But it's always in the front row. Some journalist is telling the fans in front to sit down. Then the stewards get involved trying to tell them to sit down. They don't. Then you've got fans who are diagonal to them who can't see because of these fans. It's never... Unless, hopefully I will turn up there this weekend and it's fixed. But it never seems to have been. Like I said, the atmosphere, I think it's in the last video, from Arsenal supporting friends have told me has been better than ever. Although I was told today they've changed the system at the Emirates apparently. So it's now a ballot system. So less people, regulars, are getting the tickets as much as they used to be getting them. So there's like clusters that used to be quite noisy that now have different people. It could be tourists, it could be anything, which is interesting. So yeah, we'll see how Spurs do. I do think the element of Arsenal now having the Champions League game. Obviously, they play PSV at home tonight. How that affects them. Are they going to be tired? Are there going to be injuries? Are there going to be any issues that come from that? How do they recover from a week where they've played 3 times in a week to playing Spurs who've had 8 days completely fresh and fit for it? So yeah, that leans in Spurs' favour a little bit. Both teams, similar points, I think, as well in the league this season. Both unbeaten. Yeah. It's going to be a very fascinating match. I still have this inkling of the feeling it's just come that little bit too soon for Spurs. But I still maintain that if it doesn't go well against Arsenal, if it doesn't go well against Liverpool at home next week, I really hope that people don't go overboard and lose sight of what's happening at Tottenham Hotspur, because it's huge what's happening at Spurs. It's moving in the right direction. And actually the fixtures after these 2 games aren't too shabby at all. On paper, I must stress on paper, but they aren't too shabby. And I think you'll see a very quick, even if the results... Who knows? They could win both games. And it would be just the most amazing feeling at Tottenham Hotspur right now. But if they don't, it shouldn't detract from what's being done, is what I'm trying to say. And what team will he put out? We shall see. Emerson Royale has become a dad to a little boy, so we don't know at what kind of stage he's going to be back. I'd imagine he'll be kind of heading back pretty soon. Whether does he come in to give you a slightly more defensive right back? I don't know. Is that the Postecoglou way? I don't know. Does Richarlison come into the team after his impact? Is he exactly what you need up the pitch in a kind of game like this? Maybe. Although it's quite tough to leave the others out. Although, do you take Solomon out and use him as a potential sub late on with Johnson because of the pace and trickery? Maybe. Maybe you go back to Son, Richarlison, Kulusevski, maybe. I think elsewhere the team kind of picks itself unless there's any little knocks or problems. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Still not looking forward to it, but I'll say completely opposite if they come away with a result. I would take a draw. I just want them to go there and play some great football and not be overawed by the occasion. This is my only fear, but when I say about it being too early, it's a young team and they're going into an atmosphere that is ridiculous. It is. It's going to be so noisy. Everything they do is going to be jeered. They're going to have to play out from the back in probably the most pressurised situation they've played thus far. And there are going to be mistakes, and there's naturally going to be a couple, and it's as long as they don't lead to goals. And at the other end of the pitch, got to keep scoring these goals. I think the late win will have done wonders for their confidence, if it wasn't already kind of quite high. But just kind of that spirit and the feeling within the camp that they can turn anything around should be huge. But yeah, let's see what the weekend brings us. I'll do another video hopefully Monday night, I'd imagine, chatting about everything that happened in the first North London derby of the season. Hopefully I'll have a smiley face at the start and not a sigh. But I will try to, like I say, I've got to practice what I preach. Even if it doesn't go the right way, I will analyse and criticise certain aspects, but hopefully still retain a healthy positivity about what's to come. So there you go. Right, I'm going to head off now, enjoy the rest of my day off. The rain has relented, so I might even go outside. So yeah, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.